how should you be using AI services like ChatGPT to give your SEO strategies a boost? Let's talk it over in this episode of Closing Time. Thanks for tuning into Closing Time, the show for go-to-market leaders. I'm Val Riley, head of content and digital marketing at Insightly. Today, I'm joined by Mitch Causey. He is CEO of Demandwell, an SEO growth platform. Welcome to the show, Mitch.
Thanks, Val. Great to see you and happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right in. Mitch, these AI tools have just come on strong in the last couple of months. How do you see them changing the game with SEO?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an exciting time in the world of SEO and in the world of AI. The interesting thing is AI and SEO together is really not quite as new as some may think. I actually did a project about 10 years ago with an AI content creator. And the difference, though, is that project, we published 12,000 pages on a website over the course of only 6 months. So it was a lot. But we paid nearly $300,000 to this AI company to create that content. And so just contrasting the advancements in technology since then have so incredibly dramatically reduced the amount of cost and increased the amount of accessibility. Most people weren't doing AI content back then 10 years ago. And a big reason was because of the cost. And so I'm actually so excited about right now in the world of AI plus SEO because it is so approachable thanks to, I will say, mostly OpenAI and the billions of dollars and billions of, I don't know how many, thousands and thousands of hours of work that have gone into creating an accessible and inexpensive way that we can all experience the power of AI when we're executing SEO.
Gotcha. So really just democratizing it, kind of making it available to the masses is that big shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here at Insightly, I will admit on camera, we have been using AI tools to do like a first draft of some of our writing work. And you mentioned it as a tool to rewrite and refine your work. So can you talk me through that and then what other writing related uses that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a huge fan of using AI to create a draft, just like you mentioned. But myself, I've been involved with SEO for about 15 years now, which is mildly depressing. I started when I was still in college. Back in 2008 was when I first got into it. So it's about 15 years. So I'm involved with content creation a lot, but I do not fancy myself a writer. I very much believe that a lot of people in the world of writing and creating content are a lot more creative than I am. And so what has been really beneficial for me personally is if I'm creating a piece of content and I want to change the tone, for example, in the past, it's another one of those advancements where in the past, it took a long time to train any kind of machine learned content creator. But now the level of knowledge and understanding of things like tone, not just tone of an individual, but tone of a website, using as reference, all that stuff is really helpful. So for me, if I'm creating content for a customer that's in the financial technology space, that has to be pretty buttoned up and professional. If I'm creating content for a customer in, let's say, a cosmetic space where the target market doesn't not necessarily look like me, both of those would be very difficult for me to create content around. And so what we can do is create a draft, but then use AI to translate that draft into something that the audience on the other end is going to have a much better experience with.
That's super interesting. I was just playing around with AI this morning, actually, and I asked it to write a report and approach it as an auditor would approach it. And it absolutely gave me a report that sounds like it was written by an auditor. So I really love that use case. And that's something that I think, we should absolutely be taking advantage of. So there is
Yeah.
that temptation to just let the machines do their thing with no human intervention. But I think you say you caution against that. Can you explain why?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure most of the folks listening to this or watching this have dabbled with AI, and there are certain things that are factually accurate no matter what. They're just like absolutely true. Like, what's the definition of a tornado, right? Like, there's just like one definition. But when it comes down to things, especially when a business is being innovative and creative and pushing the boundaries on things, which I hope most folks listening to this are doing, there is no one and no thing in the world that can understand your business and the unique qualities and the unique mission and passion and motions going forward that no one can know that more than someone on that team. And so if we only trust the robots to go solo and do that, they're going to be all over the place, and sometimes they're going to be spot on, but that's not going to be every time. There's going to be times where they say stuff that you would disagree with. So it's creating that it's taking again I think the word draft is so important in all this. Is taking a draft and then putting the spin of your specific company on it that only you would ever be able to do.
Right. So maybe the CEO for his monthly or her monthly letter to the employees, maybe not using AI for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I do feel like all the CEOs, CROs, and CFOs are like, hey, we should be using this for everything. And it takes someone to tap the brakes a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I have asked it to create an investment pitch for our next round of investment for me, and it did a good job. But there was maybe 30% of it that if I would have, delivered that to an investor, it would have gone terribly. So yeah,
So maybe proceed, but proceed with caution.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So I read over a recent blog post that you had up, and it had 5 factors. And I thought maybe I would read those 5 factors, and then you could just kind of put some context around them. You had mentioned giving AI an outline that is going to set the article up for success, sharing keywords and instructions. You got to check for plagiarism, which I didn't know. I didn't know AI was a bad guy, but I guess it could be. Make sure the article meets your word count and keyword requirements, and then editing the piece. And this kind of ties back to what we just said, to make sure it sounds like your brand, relays the information, but the spirit of what matters to your company and to your employees and your customers. So that's kind of like your checklist.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that last part is by far the most important part. To get to that end, though, in an easier and less painful way, the more work on the front end, the better. So that's kind of that process flow of create ordering content or setting up your prompts, however you want to call it, to set up the AI for success. And success is not defined as like some objective thing. It's very subjective. But one way that I define it is how long it takes to edit it. If I if I create a draft, but then it takes me 2 hours to edit it, that's not really saving me much time. But if I do 10 minutes of really thoughtful prompting that leads to an article that only takes me 20 minutes to edit, now I'm much more efficient.
Right. So just like you would set up a writer or a freelancer for success, you still have
Yeah,
to do the same thing with the robots.
exactly, exactly. Yeah.
I think it all comes down to, especially that last point is, and you made this point, Google is always going to prioritize what it says is an excellent search experience, right? And so kind of guiding the robot to create content that meets that standard for Google.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you read the guidelines within Google, it's all about serving the customer what they want to see. It's fulfilling the language they use is fulfilling the need of the user. And so a big part of that is actually even like the format of an article. If someone is searching for a story and their goal is to be entertained, then make sure, that you should make sure that you're prompting the AI to say it in a funny or engaging or, as a comedian would write it or something. But if someone's looking for, something more serious, like a medical issue, then it needs to be, written in a way that is, certain format of telling them, what to look for, like the symptoms and all that stuff. Like those are very serious things that not only from a tone perspective need to be true, but they need to be factually accurate as well. So, making sure that you're when you think about a user going to Google and searching for something, they have a need, and it's because of that need that they're taking their time that none of us have, much of, and they're trying to find something. So if you can match whatever you're producing for the specific need that someone is searching for, that will create a great search experience, and that will help from an organic search, SEO rising in the rankings perspective as well.
Got it. So I'm going to put you on the hot seat a little bit here because you said you've been in the
Yeah.
SEO game for 15 years.
Yes.
Two-parter. One, is AI the most disruptive thing you've seen in the last 15 years? And then two, what do you see in the next 15?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely do think that the iteration of AI that we are seeing right now is the most, exciting or disruptive change. Personally, I believe a huge indication of that is watching Bing and Google and how they are interacting with each other right now. That has not there. Google has not been threatened by Bing for an extremely long time, and they really are. And you read the statements, and you can tell that they are definitely reacting strongly. So that's fantastic. And then I think the next 15 years is the same as the last 15 in terms of that search experience perspective. All of this works not because of robots, and it never has. It's only all worked because of humans. The only reason that search engine optimization matters is because there are humans that are taking their precious time plugging in and trying to find an answer. And so, I think it will look, differently, maybe in the whats, but I think the whys will remain the same. And I think if we can focus on that and make sure that we're always understanding our audience well, what their problems are, providing them with solutions in the best way, I think it'll all work out.
All right, sage advice. Mitch, thank you so much for joining us today on Closing Time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, to all our viewers out there tuning in, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that button for notifications so you don't miss an episode. We'll see you next time. Take care.